start off with talking a little bit about history. Do we know the history of the fashionable heel? Does anyone know why it was invented, who it was invented for? Any ideas out there? No? Well, it was actually not even meant to be fashionable, the fashionable heel, and it wasn't even meant to be for women. Actually, the heel was invented for men. Yes, for men. In the 10th century, Persian soldiers could actually ride better and stay in their stirrups and aim better with their arrows if they wore high heels. And behind me, I think if the PowerPoint works, at some point, I shall show you an image of the high heel. There it is, up there on the left. That is the first heel that was invented in the 10th century. So that's the first point that I want to make. There are lots of misconceptions in fashion. Now, it is a fact that more women take up fashion degrees than men. However, yes, we all think that fashion is a woman's world, but let me tell you something. 15 of the big fashion house labels are in fact run by men. Only 2 are run by women. And I'm trying to change that trend. I am the co-founder of the first Turkish Fashion and Arts Fashion Festival worldwide, and my co-founder is indeed another woman. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't work with men. We've got a lot to learn from them. They've done some amazing things. But when you look at the cover of a magazine, you flick through the images, all you see predominantly is women. So shouldn't we be represented better? Shouldn't we be making those decisions now in 2024 about sustainability, equal rights, fair trade, all of these important factors? We need to have much more of a voice, and that's what I want to see. I need women to be more up at the forefront making these important decisions. Surely social impact can only be authentic when we are all part of the decision making. Now you may ask me a question, then how, as a woman, have you become so influential in the fashion industry and so invested in it? The question is, more importantly, how as a Turkish Cypriot woman did I get involved in this? I grew up in the UK, in London. I don't know if you can tell from my accent. I'm very British, mash and peas and, you know, being part of the East End. I'm very proud of my heritage. I'm very proud of being British. But essentially, I am Turkish Cypriot. But growing up, I didn't actually know what that meant. I had no idea. Bar my small Turkish Cypriot community in the UK, Turkey, and I think Pakistan at the time, no one else knew I existed. So the way I found my identity, the way I became who I was through fashion. And my big influence in my life, the person who made me feel authentic, was, of course, my mum. My mum is in the audience today, and I watched her very closely as a child, and I loved the stories that she had to tell me. She was born here in Cyprus, and she was actually an academic. She actually came away from college with 4 A-levels, which is quite a feat nowadays. Not many young people walk away with 4 A-levels. But when she first came to the UK, that was not recognised. So she very quickly tried to assimilate to her surroundings, and she became a seamstress. She worked for the factories, and the factory managers at that time would come around with their bundles, and she would do overlocking and alterations, and she worked very, very hard in the rag trade. And she would tell me the story of her stern older brother, telling her that she had to pay her way, you know, because it was hard times starting out in a whole new country. As a lot of you here can relate to, being students in a completely different place, it's not easy. But she would tell me about the fact that she would save up her money, and once a month or once every 2 months or 3 months, she would go down to a very famous market called Petticoat Lane Market. And I have a picture of it here. It's very iconic. And it was the place to go to if you knew anything about style. And she would pick up material and she would create dresses. And many years later, after her becoming a shopkeeper, a seamstress, going into lots of different other professions, I would watch her. She still had that habit. She'd go somewhere, she'd buy a dress, and it looked perfectly fine to me. It looked beautiful. And she'd be like, no, I'm going to change the shoulder pads. Oh, I'm going to add a bow here. Oh, I'm going to add a frill here. And she would hand create all of these fantastic designs. And that fascinated me. It intrigued me. And I wanted to slay my own style. I know you're going to say it's cheesy, but that's it. I wanted to slay my own style. And I wanted to do what my mum did. So I used to also watch a movie. I don't know if you know this movie called The Wizard of Oz. Anyone know this movie? It's a very, very old movie. It's now been made into a musical called Wicked. In my days, we used to have DVDs. Do you guys know what that is? But I would watch it on repeat again and again and again. And I think my parents were like, really? We're going to watch it for the 100th time. But you know what scene fascinated me was the scene in Oz. And I've got it here. And someone actually said it was that St. Patrick's Day. But no, this was Oz. Can we see them all dressed in green? And we see that shining palace at the top. And basically, somewhere over the rainbow was people united and happy, working as a team. And the way they showed that was through their clothes. And again, that fascinated me because contrary to the common belief that fashion is exclusive, something that you can't obtain, it's actually very inclusive. And we see that in our cultural dress, in our traditions. Isn't it amazing when we dress up in our cultural clothes and we have a celebration, right? Don't we feel proud? Don't we feel united? So that's what fashion is actually about. It's about community. It's about coming together. And it's essentially about being human. So I became interested in fashion. It wasn't a great mystery. I started off as a hand model, but I was watching films like Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, and I would watch those fashion models on the podium, and I was told, you have to be 5'8", you have to be 5'9", you have to be 6 foot. But I was like, why? Why? I represent a lot of women out there. There's a lot of women small like me. And then something miraculous happened. I found my niche. And that's what you've got to do. And my niche was petite modeling. And when I found out that that was a possibility, that I could actually do petite modeling, I worked really hard and I found out what I could about it and everything I could about it. So I would say that's the first secret, finding your niche, and don't ever let anyone stop you from coming up with your dreams, even if you are too short or you're the wrong size or the wrong shape. Actually, fashion isn't about being a certain way. It's about all of us. And even fashion psychologists actually say nowadays that if you see images of people that represent you in these magazines, in these adverts, it actually makes you more likely to buy it and it makes you happy. So it's been scientifically proven. So we need to fight against this. So yes, I got into petite modeling, but I still felt like I needed to find my voice. So I created a portfolio. And again, the belief is that you have to have very professional photos. That's not true. I experimented, I made lots of mistakes. I formed contracts with people that I shouldn't have formed, but I wasn't afraid. And when something felt wrong, I took a step back. So don't be afraid to make those mistakes and take that step back. If a situation isn't right, then step away from it. So I noticed I didn't have a voice. I didn't feel represented. So I then sidestepped into presenting for fashion. I wanted to talk about these issues. I was passionate about it. But more importantly, I listened. I listened to people's stories. And again, my mum was my inspiration. Many years after bringing me up, she decided to go and work for the Turkish radio. She knew nothing about DJing, and she would make lots of notes. And every week she'd go in there, and no one would help her, and she'd make more notes, and she'd experiment with the buttons, but she didn't give up. So I took heed from her, and I didn't give up. So I added strings to my bow. Nearly 93% of youth are actually happy when they're kind to each other, and it's scientifically proven. I tried to be kind. I tried to listen. When you make pitches, it's very important that people earn your trust, and that's what I did. I earned people's trusts, yes. These relationships were the most important relationships of my life. I formed 2 relationships with 2 women. One was the CEO of Against TV, and the other was the CEO of SM Global Catwalk. And I started to host in Paris, Milan, New York, and London. But essentially, the reason why I was able to do this was the connections that I made with these people, the fact that I listened to them and I was kind. Also, the connections I made with the Medi Foundation. I'm very proud to be the ambassador for the Medi Foundation and all the wonderful work that they do. But it's funny how you don't realize it, but you actually inherit lots of things from your own history. And my mum again told me another story about my grandmother and how at one point in her life, she was struggling here in Cyprus, trying to educate her daughters. So she decided to go from village to village selling materials. Now, my mum told me that her materials weren't the best. They weren't the most luxurious. But the reason why people bought them was because she was kind and she listened to people and they enjoyed her company. And this really resonated with me. I couldn't believe how much in my veins, my heritage, I had the history. My mum now is a published author of 3 poetry books, amazing achievements, women not scared to add strings to their bows. So that's another point I want to make. Don't be afraid to try lots of different things. You don't have to just be a fashion host, a model, an actress. You can do all of these things and add strings to your bows. It's scary leaving university without a plan, or starting a side hustle, or beginning something new, or leaving something, leaving somebody. But don't be afraid. No plan is the worst than having the wrong plan. Think things through, and most importantly, be true to yourself. Create your authentic story. And if you are as lucky as I am to have inspirational people behind you, it's a bonus. For my flame, my spark came from a great generation of women. My mum, my grandmother, all coming from a beautiful island called Cyprus. And it's wonderful that I'm standing here now today, full circle, back in my homeland, saying to you that I am truly inspired. Thank you very much. Thank you.